I'm standing in front of the Whipple House in Ipswich. The Whipple House is the most important first period house in town, and that's actually saying quite a lot, because Ipswich has more first period houses than any town in the nation. The Whipple House was built by Captain John Whipple in 1677, and it's now an important part of the Ipswich Museum. And inside the most important house in Ipswich, we have the most important chair in Ipswich. It was made by John Gaines in about the 1720s, and he was a famous colonial chair maker. John Gaines III was born in Ipswich in 1704. He was one of a three-generation family of chair makers, but he was by far the most successful. They lived in 3 High Street in a house that was built not long after John was born and is still there today, although if John came back to see it, we're not at all sure he'd recognise it because it was remodelled in the federal period. John was so successful that he actually had to move up the road to Portsmouth, which he did in 1724. He went to Portsmouth because it was a much busier port. The shipping routes up and down the northeast coast were much more efficient, and he was so well known by that time, and he was still very young, but he was so well known that his chairs were exported in large quantities to New York, Philadelphia, and all up and down the coast of New England. Now, most of his chairs then were made in Portsmouth because he lived there and worked there for longer than he did in Ipswich, but we're pretty confident that this is an Ipswich chair. But we mustn't think of Gaines as being a sort of local provincial chair maker. He was actually very well hooked in to a global network of taste and fashion. This chair is as much global as it is local. It's as much Chinese as it is Massachusetts. The overall form of the chair, which is completely new to Western furniture, comes from China. The curved, S-curved back is a Chinese invention. Before then, backs were straight. And this is the first time in furniture history that the back of a chair has actually approximated the shape of the back of the human. The legs too, the curved cabriole legs, they came from China. They came via Europe, where they got the name cabriole, which is actually a reference to the hind leg of a leaping goat. On the feet, down here, we have what are often called Spanish feet. Actually, they're Portuguese. In 1662, King Charles II of England married a Portuguese noblewoman, Catherine of Braganza, and the English furniture makers adapted these Portuguese feet, called them Braganza feet, and put them on fashionable chairs. The fashion quickly spread from London to Boston, and in Boston, people didn't care if it was Portugal or Spain. They simply called them Spanish feet. We have China, Portugal, Boston, but where's Ipswich? Where's John Gaines? And actually we can see him very clearly in 2 or 3 spots on this chair. First, these little ankle warmers, we could call them. They're between the Chinese curves of the cabriole legs and the Portuguese feet. They're a unique John Gaines feature. Nobody else done them. In fact, this chair may be one of the very few with those sort of decorations on the ankles. If we look here, on the seat rail, there's an interesting little step forward where the splat meets the rail. No other chair maker has done that. And then perhaps most importantly of all, normally these chairs with a raised flat top are plain and not carved. John Gaines carved his profusely, and that makes a very big difference to the overall aesthetics of the chair. But we do John Gaines an injustice, really, if we just look at the quirky, individualistic little features he put on his furniture. He was really an artist. He had a superb eye for form and for coherence, how the various elements of a piece fitted together. Now look at this chair. This was made in Boston by a sophisticated cabinet maker at about the same time as John Gaines made his in Ipswich. It's currently in the Winterthur Museum, one of the most prestigious collections of American furniture in the country. And do you know, our John Gaines chair knocks the socks off it. Let's look at the backs first. The way we judge the aesthetics of an India back, as these are called, is by the shape of the voids. Those are the empty spaces on either side of the splat between the upright rails. Look at the Boston chair. See how unsatisfactory the top of that void is. It's square. It seems almost to separate the crest of the chair from the rest of the back. It's not aesthetically a good shape. Now look at the voids on John Gaines's chair. The carving has given them a sort of pedimented shape. They tie the crest rail back into the upright chair rails in a way that does not happen on the Boston chair. And they all bring the integrity of the back into a single unity. Gaines really was an artist. If we look at the stretchers, we see the same sort of thing. The stretchers on the Boston chair are beautifully turned. They're very fine work indeed, but they're straight. They form an H with right angles. The rest of the chair is defined by its curves. So a straight H with right angles completely contradicts the aesthetics of the chair. Now we look at John Gaines's stretchers. They are a wonderfully complex series of incurves and outcurves that really complement the curvilinear form of the chair. They not only fit the general aesthetic of the chair, they actually add to it. So that's the difference between the Boston chair that was made by a craftsman and Gaines' chair that was made by an artist. I love the way that he managed to combine individual little quirkiness, if you like, with a global fashion, with conventions that everybody else followed, but no one gave quite the individualism that John Gaines did. We're very proud that he's here. We're very proud we've got one of his masterpieces in the Whipple Museum.